Yep, I think I'm live now. Yeah. Okay, this is going to be a completely experimental stream. I've never done anything like this before, completely, utterly unscripted. Um, and this is not going to be a broadcast for the kids. So if you got any hanging around your Facebook page, pack them off to bed because it's way past their bedtime. Um, some home truths I'm just going to share about our collective living circumstances now. First of all, one feels a little like the guy who comes home to the marital home, walks up to the marital bedroom, and finds that his wife of many years, with whom he has children and an established relationship, has got her legs around the back of her ears with his best friend busy doing things which are completely unthinkable and utterly unspeakable. I use that image because I can't think of anything which is more heartbreaking, more a perfect representation of betrayal than what I think our current society is showing all of us wherever we live in the world. Let me start with one of my old chestnuts. You know, I've had to unravel a lot of my thinking purely based on the information I had before, the way I interpreted it and perceived it and understood it. A little bit like our erstwhile chum who came home and thought he had a stable marriage, not knowing that his wife and his best friend were doing the unspeakable. Talking about white supremacism to start off with. It is such a crock. And it is a crock because real power, real authority means one thing, that you get to determine your own destiny. And one of the shockers is that I looked to my left, looked to my right, looked to the top, looked beneath me, and I discovered that most so-called white people, most Europeans, are like cattle. They're total servants in their own homes, their own countries. And yet they've been taught for years that they were the chosen of the world, that they were superior to everybody else. The truth is that given the situation of the world, of Europe right now, people are powerless. And I find it shocking because I always thought that this was the United Kingdom, for example. Let me say the United Kingdom because that's where I am. I always thought that an Englishman was a free man. And all the events of the past, really since about March last year, for the past year and a couple of months, have demonstrated to me that Brits aren't free at all. They're slaves to a particular system. And if Brits were ever held up as the supreme of the white crop, alongside the Germans, the French, the Americans, etc., then that was the biggest lie ever told mankind. It's a great lie because when you tell somebody that they're superior, what it does is that it fluffs up their ego, makes them feel as if they are somebody, makes them feel as if they matter, makes them feel as if they've got something that'll give them power and makes them feel as if they've got somebody they can look down on. And what I've seen in the last year or so is the demonstration that British liberty is hanging on by its fingertips. In fact, I suspect that even at the height of the Second World War, Brits probably felt more free then facing the real terror of the possibility of Nazi Germany across the Channel, thinking about invading Britain, than they feel now. Right now, Brits feel powerless. And if they feel powerless and are fighting desperately for their liberty, there's a demonstration in London tomorrow. What the heck does white supremacism mean? Africans should particularly pay attention to this. And it leads me to the conclusion that white supremacism was just a crock. It was just a load of old tosh told to people to anesthetize them, to blind them to the fact that actually they were servants to a few exalted people in their own society. And that it helped to have somebody underneath them to make them feel as if they also were somebody. But really, the evidence of the past year and a bit has shown white supremacism is a load of utter rubbish. Africans should pay attention to that. On the contrary, what I've seen is that the people in our society here in Britain are all being treated like cogs in a wheel. And what shocks me more than anything else, this goes to coming home and finding that your darling other half is in bed with somebody else, is how high up society that cog in the wheel syndrome travels. You have people who are very senior in Britain who are completely powerless to determine the run of events that shape and determine their lives. Another thing that comes to mind is that I've always wondered why, when I post about race and so on, because most of my friends, I would say, come from higher demographic, perhaps more privileged white people who you would expect to call shots, take names, kick ass, that sort of thing. I've always wondered why, when I posted about race and so on, they were silent. And my impression was, they're being silent because this ruse of white supremacism actually suits them. It works for them. And that actually, secretly, they like it. And I have always thought somewhere deep inside of me that some of the people I know and the way I know them, it just so jars with their spoken image of the world, their spoken image of themselves, their avowed values, how they define themselves. It just so jars with the monstrosity of thinking that they are some kind of superior form of life who can watch others be treated with extreme cruelty and shut up about it. Now I'm coming to entertain other thoughts. Sometimes when people are silent, it's not because they like what they're seeing. It's because the truth is they are completely powerless to do anything about what's going on. And now that I know that her ladyship is in the sack with Matty Groves, that was an old song by a band called Fairport Convention in my misspent youth. Now that we know that there is some kind of infidelity, there's a major betrayal going on, it doesn't surprise me at all, and I find it a rather useful theory to explain people's behavior. People are silent because they haven't got a mouth to speak, because they are, in actual fact, quite the opposite of privilege. They are just in the eyes of those who really have the power, in the eyes of those who have actually created this construct of white supremacism, the instruments they use to enforce white supremacism are just cattle. They're like serfs in the feudal hierarchy, no matter how high their station is. When the thought struck, I thought, at first I used to blame people for their behavior, but the truth is that they're having to live a lie which doesn't hold water. And this lie is kept in place by those who consider most people their serfs. Look, a lot's been said about the purpose of this vaccination. That's not the purpose of this post at all. But many people are talking about world depopulation. For God's sake, Prince Philip, the Queen's husband, said that in the next life he'd come back as a virus because there were far too many people and they were doing far too many awful things. And he wanted to come back as a virus to wipe them all out. Bill Gates is well known as an advocate of reducing population. Of course, he would do it through all kinds of means. But, again, that's above the pay grade of this particular post to address. But it goes round to the old playbook. Africans are very keen to say that, oh, well, the Europeans came, especially the British. They were masters of divide and rule and so on. It's the same old playbook. Divide and rule happened in Europe before they came to Africa, further honed the skill of divide and rule, and took it back again, and it's being played right here in Europe. You get one end of society played off against another. You think none of you have got common purpose. You think none of you have got a common interest. And yet the truth is, you're all cattle in the eyes of whoever or whatever it is that's shaping your destiny. I'm not like that. I don't believe in being a cattle or a sheep. It offends against every single instinct of my sense of my own humanity. I can't live like that. I'm not alone. A lot of people are like that. But the reason I mention that is that if acquiescing to the silence that permeates British life and British society, and it seems that everybody who is here, it doesn't matter their ethnicity, black people are silent, white people are silent, Asian people are silent, then there's a tiny minority of people who are incredibly vocal. And to be honest with you, there isn't even a social demographic for those people. It could be a street sweeper. It could be the head of a corporation. It seems to be more a character trait. It seems to be more a personality type that just refuses to knuckle down to this. You're just a piece of chattel property, effectively a modern day slave, hamster on a wheel, when whoever is deciding what the future is going to be, whether it's mandatory vaccination, whether it's lockdowns, whether it's scientific advice, whether it's censorship, who decides what information we should have and what information we shouldn't have? And who the devil do they think they are? They obviously think themselves superior. They obviously think themselves willy-nilly, ipso facto, self-evidently in charge, and they obviously have the power to back it up. It's the power they have to back it up that shows the futility, the emptiness, the vacuousness of any conception of white supremacism, because the very people that they treat like utter rubbish white people. White people aren't superior at all. White people are very sad, like everybody else in the world right now. So it makes me wonder, Africans are busy. Many have bought this crock of white supremacism. Many have bought this crock that everything is better in Europe than where they are. And many are busy trying to ape Europe, very much as second-class Europeans, very much as I was called a counterfeit European once by a very good friend of mine, dear Willie, of blessed memory. He's passed on now, but he was a dear friend. But in jest, he would say, "Tete, you counterfeit African, come over here." It was very funny. But he used that trope because it was such a common thing for Africans to be second-class white people. Do you want to be a second-class slave? Really? Really? And so what model should Africa look for? I would say that because Africa isn't so advanced down this road of, of kind of feudal chattelized slavery, Africa must build something completely different. And yet, because of the economic and therefore political and military hold the West has over Africa, the West is trying to replicate exactly the same cogs in a wheel, hamster on a treadmill lifestyle that they have imposed and enslaved their people with. Ooh, for a month, 2-3 weeks in a year, everybody goes on holiday and they go absolutely crazy about having to go on a holiday. Well, so would you as well if you'd been kind of enslaved for the other part of the year. You would need to get out of that pressure cooker and come back straight into it again. So Africans have to work out something completely new. It's a huge responsibility. And to work out something completely new, they need to slough off this notion that everything European is good, because what Europe is going through now, which is just an escalation of the First World War happened, Second World War happened. This is World War P, World War pandemic that's happening now. It's going to be far worse than anything we've ever had before, because as a result of this pandemic, fundamental human liberties are going to be taken away. I'm hearing things about the medication that's being shot into people's arms, and to which, together with all the censorship that's going on, all the losses of liberty and freedom and so on, that it's going to change the mindset of humanity. You know, it's like the elephants, how elephants are trained in India. If you're going to get them to work for you as a child, you first tie their feet to a tree trunk. You can't do anything about that because it's a baby elephant. It just doesn't got the strength. Then as it grows up and grows up and grows up, you just tie its leg to a stake in the ground. Now, to be honest with you, a grown elephant has the power that if it broke wind, it could just lift its leg out of the ground, tethered to a stake. But by then it's been brainwashed into thinking that it can't do it, so it won't even try. So it does mean, though, that in Africa, there are a few things we've got to throw out the window. The look good, feel good thing is completely meaningless, because you can do the look good, feel good thing when you have created a bedrock of infrastructure, good health, good education, uh, 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 proper public services that run on time, and so on. Then, when you put on that looking good and feeling good, it makes sense. Till then, We have to find other ways of making ourselves look good and feel good. Otherwise, we look like performing chimpanzees. With the great look, with the greatest of respect, we look idiotic. We don't have a proper drainage system, but we're pouting on Instagram and doing this and that and the other. It looks stupid, frankly. Our people don't have 3 square meals a day. Today was I think it was World Menstruation Day. We still tax female sanitary products to the hilt and make having a period a luxury event. Does that make sense to us? Really? So, if you got a lovely off-road car, I'm the first person to fall in love with nice cars. I love nice cars. I love nice clothes. I love nice things. I'm a bit of an aesthete. I love art, so on and so forth. This is something that I wouldn't begrudge any human being. It brings to life, but everything has to be contextualized. If you're living in a beautiful mansion with a swimming pool, air conditioned from end to end, and at the bottom of your road, as happens at the bottom of my road in Ghana, there are people who are living in much worse circumstances. Yeah, we need to take a view. Because there is no point pretending to be the cattle that are being produced in Europe, in Africa. Why not take a lesson? It says, I think in the Buddhist writings, it says that the cart that overturns on the road ahead is a warning to the one behind. There's no point replicating the mistakes that they've made. All it's led them to is a massive technocracy, which is now threatening to take over the entire planet. It's one of the reasons why I do my broadcasts, and I'm always looking for new voices. I don't want the voices that have been validated by the BBC, ITN, Channel 4, NBC, CNN, and all the other mainstream media, because all of them have been groomed to give you the impression that you're living in a faithful marriage. They have been groomed to sell you a narrative which is completely false. They probably have qualities which are good and useful, but there are millions of other people with qualities which are good and useful who will never get a look in. That's why I want to do Renaissance TV. Then there are those people who think that they haven't been successful unless they've done the mainstream. I've done the BBC. I used to present on Network Africa on the BBC World Service, worked at Radio 5, done a lot of stuff at Radio 4, LBC and so on. I've done that, and at the end of the day, the question you've got to ask is, what did you achieve? Because a pat on the back and a paycheck isn't enough. A pat on the back and a paycheck still leaves you as the so-called person with white privilege who is actually a hamster on a treadmill and not privileged at all, who has no power to determine their destiny. That's what we got to work out. And until we work it out, we need to stop anesthetizing ourselves, in my humble opinion, with trash and trivia. Everybody's got to laugh. You've got to have a look at my page. I put some, I put some pretty edgy stuff on there sometimes. It's because everybody needs a laugh, but there has to be a balance between content and trivia, between trash and real value creation. And that, it seems to me, is where we are now. We don't have a choice, because if we continue the way we're going at the moment, you'll come and discover that, rather than it being your wife who's sleeping with somebody else, or your dearest loved one sleeping. You'll come back and discover that actually your father isn't your father and your mother isn't your mother at all. That would be a whole other level of horrible. So there we are. This was quite experimental. And like I said, I've never done anything like this before. But these are thoughts. Please share your comments. Please share your ideas about what you think. And remember, maybe if you have to be silent, it's not so much a statement of you being happy with where you are. Maybe it's not so much a statement of you thinking that I'm talking, the French call it bolo, utter rubbish. Maybe you should rank home the fact that maybe you don't have the power you would like to have, in which case you ought to take it back and speak your truth. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Those of you who go on that demonstration tomorrow, please look after yourselves and be safe. And yeah, strike a point for good old common or garden old human liberty, and a blow against those who would have that who would have the nerve to think that they dare rule us all as they wish. Good night.